either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
Welcome to The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. I'm Nico.
And I'm Chris.
And today we are entering the wild, wild frontier.
We are. Of musicals.
Yes. Well, and a weird musical too,
It is. This is one of the weirder ones, but somehow still nationally loved.
Yeah, I honestly had never heard of this until you brought it up.
This is one of my favorite musicals of all time. Seven Brides for Seven Brothers.
Yes, and I think you described it to me as the manliest musical.
It is a very manly musical. It is also, like, the most upsetting musical. The plot to this musical, on paper and in the movie, is terrible.
Yes.
It is absolutely, absolutely terrible. It was terrible when it was made. It is terrible today. And I can understand why there are people out there who cannot stomach this movie because of that. I get it. But the music and the dancing for me, like, I grew up with this musical. It was one of the few musicals my grandparents had. Mm-hmm. So it holds a very special place in my heart.
Yeah, I didn't really get into musicals until high school when I was involved in theater and whatnot. Mm-hmm, but even then, like, today I don't actively seek them out. I end up kind of stumbling upon them.
Yeah.
Like, last night, I kind of forgot we were doing a musical today, and I rewatched Burst City.
Ah, yes.
And I have a desire to show it to Brian to piss him off.
Yes. This is... Seven Brides for Seven Brothers is one of the quote-unquote classical musicals. It rears its head when people start talking about, like, the good old musicals.
Yeah, good, wholesome.
The good old wholesome family musicals. And while there's definitely, like, a love affair with those musicals, especially if you're into musicals, a lot of us have a love for things like Grease, for this one, Hairspray, all of these sorts of musicals. A lot of us end up in them from high school, group theaters, that sort of stuff. The older musicals and the newer musicals, we've seen a huge shift in the musical world, especially more recently. The topics have gone from quote-unquote family values, and we're going to talk about those, especially because this movie's one of them, to more modern ideas of good morals, more diverse subject matter in general, more diversity in who is the subject matter, so a lot less stereotypical white family sort of musicals. This one, though, peaks in that, wow, we're real white and real oppressive, aren't we?
Well, and okay, so for this one, it kind of makes sense. I did a little... So this movie takes place in Oregon.
It does.
In the Oregon Territory specifically, which I did learn that it was mainly white people and it was illegal to own slaves, so at the time it was...
Yeah, and then on top of that, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, the musical that we all know, is based off of a book, or a short, that was based off of a classic Roman myth of the Sabar women. I could be saying that wrong. Sabin women.
Yeah.
And the original myth has problems because it is about the Roman soldiers going into other countries, stealing, kidnapping, and raping their women, taking them home and being like, haha, you're mine now.
I will get into a little bit because I did a little bit of digging on the history of some of this stuff. So,
yes.
Did I write notes on it? Not 100%. So
That's okay.
Some of it might be iffy.
Yes.
So,
but for most people, they see that part, they see the overarching plot of this movie, and it's not great from that point of view.
It's fine for the 50s.
The 50s loved this movie. They loved this musical, which explains a lot.
Yeah. And so, before we really get into it, Chris, what are we drinking today?
The better question is, what are we not drinking today?
Because neither of us planned to drink for this episode.
Well, okay, so...
One, I just got back from vacation, so I completely forgot.
You literally just got back from vacation. I'm in the middle of moving, and they consume one drink in this movie, and it is black coffee, and it is... Oh, it's creeping up on 6 o'clock here. and I don't want to be awake till 3 a.m.
Me either.
So,
I don't have time for that.
No. So, despite me as a child desperately wanting to know what the main character's stew tastes like, because, boy, that slop looked delicious, despite the fact that they eat it off of a plate with a fork, still don't understand. They only really drink coffee, so we're having water today.
Yes.
Good, clean tap water that they definitely didn't have.
Cheers.
Cheers. Not well water. Delicious.
So, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers is a 1954 musical.
Yes, it was.
Written by Albert Hackett, Francis Goodrich, and Dorothy Kingsley.
Yes.
It was directed by Stanley Donen, who people will probably also know him from singing, more specifically, Singing in the Rain and Charades.
Yes.
But I know him more from his work with Audrey Hepburn through Funny Face and Two for the Road.
And honestly, this film had a lot of people who, especially if you like this genre of like time and film, you're gonna re-recognize a lot of people. Yeah, no, there's
a lot of names that I know are supposed to be important, but I have no clue.
This isn't your genre?
No, well, and even then, like, I've mentioned a handful of times, like, the musicals, I end up stumbling upon not realizing they're musicals, and they're always, like, the odd ones out, like The Lure or Tokyo Tribe.
Surprise musical. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so the two main stars are Howard Keel and Jane Powell.
Yes.
So Seven Brides for Seven Brothers actually started off as a pet project by producer Jack Cummings, who had asked the husband and wife team of Goodrich and Kingsley to adapt the 1938 story, The Sobbin' Women by Stephen Vincent Bennett. The film was originally going to be called Sobbin' Women, but MGM didn't like that. And then it was renamed A Bride for Seven Brothers.
Plural bride. Or singular bride.
Singular bride.
Yeah, singular bride.
And the censors didn't like the name because it was too risque.
Out of everything in this movie, that's the risque part.
Well, I mean, by today's standards, our minds are going specifically somewhere.
Oh, sure.
But it does, we have to remember that this is still during the coded age of movies.
Oh, very much so. And adorable. And while there's still a lot that got left in that I think nowadays we probably would have rewritten if we were going to go with this story, the things that the censors found offensive kind of makes me laugh, because they found this part offensive, and then they found a later, like, 1 or 2 lines in a couple of the songs offensive. But other than that, this movie was actively promoted. Its, like, main cover at the time was of Adam, the main character, whisking his wife away over his shoulder, which doesn't happen in the movie.
No.
But that's how they promoted it, and they also promoted it saying, like, they listed all the brothers and how, like, they used a different word for kidnapped, stole, whisked away. They used, like, a bunch of different ones for all of the brothers, and the MGM was just like, yep.
Cool.
Hilarious. Love it.
The marketing can be risky, but the movie can't.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so, just to give a bit of my main sources, it's all from commentary from director Stanley Donen, who actually returned to comment on the film 50 years after its release. And one thing I have noticed after 2 years of doing this and listening to multiple older movie commentaries is that movies of this kind, especially when it's older directors, actors, or producers, often end up with them commenting on, like, when they last saw other cast and crew members' children or grandchildren.
Yes. There was a lot of comments of, like, oh, this actor, he went on to do great things, but his daughter's such a really great ballet. Yeah. Like, he hadn't had a daughter by this point, like, when the film was made. Yeah,
it's just them reminiscing about a lot of stuff.
It is. And if you're a really big fan of this movie, I think the commentary's entertaining. But I wouldn't say it's, like, it's definitely not to par with some of our newer commentary stuff. It's very much an old man in rewatching a film that he loved making.
Yeah, and I mean that's just also partly because commentary wasn't really a thing at that time.
No.
And I mean, even then, like, a lot of movies weren't. They came and went, and they were never really expected to last as long as they have.
I also don't think people were expected to hype up their own work or, like, remember all of the details about their work as much as nowadays people expect you to be able to talk in 6 different ways about the thing you were just in.
Yeah.
Back then, you didn't really have to do that. Your movie came out, people saw it, that was kind of it.
Yeah.
I'll add to that source because I watched that one too. But I also watched a much later interview with 3 of the main actresses.
Okay.
I can't remember what TV show it was, unfortunately. I found it on the YouTubes. But they went back and reminisced a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, because of vacation, I only stuck with what was on the DVD myself.
Fair.
So, though the one thing I will say before we really get into it that I found was probably, for me, the most interesting part is that the film was actually shot twice.
Yes.
Because it was originally going to be shot in Cinescope, and it was shot in Cinescope. But because it was a newer technology, MGM was worried that most cinemas would not be equipped for the new format. And since they wanted it in all theaters, they had to shoot it in Cinescope and standard format, which there is a big difference between the two.
There is. And if you get the newer DVD, thankfully it does have both. And they are, especially if you've watched this a whole bunch like I have, it is fun to, like, compare the differences. But if you only have the one, the wider screen format is much preferred. Yeah.
And just to spoil a little bit, the standard format was actually never released until DVD. And I was a little annoyed because that was the only special feature on disc 2.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And I might be a little bit spoiled in the DVDs I've been picking up, so.
I was going to say, that, I mean, it has a special feature.
Yeah. Yep. And, yeah. And also, it's also a weird one, too, because we accidentally picked an odd non-traditional music back-to-back with the odd non-Disney musical, and the fact that redheads are the protagonists, which we normally don't see a lot of.
Yeah. So the actors aren't all actually redheads. Most of them had to dye their hair. And I've seen some people comment on that, mostly because of all of the other issues that the movie brings up. The only reason that the main brothers' hairs are all red is because they were worried that the audience wouldn't be able to pick them out of a crowd.
Yeah, or they were too similar to the townsfolk.
Yeah, and so later on, especially at the barn raising scene, everyone has a bright shirt, and that costuming works really well, but they don't get nice clean shirts at the beginning of the movie, and they wanted it to be really clear that these weren't just, like, random dudes hanging out in the woods. These are the brothers. The wilderness brothers.
The manly men.
The manly men living out in the woods by themselves.
Yes. So, into Seven Brides for Seven Brothers.
It opens... I love the beginning of this movie so much.
Yeah.
It opens with Adam, our main protagonist, who's a tall, burly, red-headed man with a beard strolling into town to sell his furs. He's got all leathers, he's got fringe everywhere, and he walks into the general shop and wittily, wink wink, nudge nudge, 1950s humor, gonna buy me a wife.
Gonna find him a wife.
Yep.
Well, before we get into him getting into town, we actually have some on-site shots.
We do.
And we are revealed that we are in the Oregon Territory in 1850.
Yep. Old-time times.
So to give a little bit of context of when this is taking place historically and why it might not fit with today's standards as well.
Yes.
Is that it was set 9 years before Oregon became a state and 11 years before the Civil War.
Yes.
And so there is actually a bit of a story as to why most of this, why the opening is so important or so cool compared to the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
And it's because most of the film was actually shot on a back lot because and
a sound
studio, and a lot of the close-ups had the mountains optically printed in, or it was a backdrop.
Yes.
And this was because the director Donen wanted to film on location over the course of a year to get the change of seasons, which would have been cool, but
it would have been really cool.
When MGM heard of this, they halved the budget and gave it to what was going to be their shoe-in at the time, Brigadoon.
Yes, and this kept happening throughout the filming of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Every time they asked for something, MGM pretty much went, oh, no. And then they took more money from their budget and put it into this other movie, which won much less awards.
Yes. And I've known of Brigadoon. I've never seen it myself because my mom talks about it all the time when she was because she did it twice in high school.
Yeah.
And so I've heard of Brigadoon, but I had never heard of Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, which is a bit odd.
Yeah.
But since the budget was so tight, and this is what I think makes the movie that much more impressive, is that there was not time for retakes, and there was very little choreography or rehearsal done beforehand.
In some cases, no rehearsal.
Yeah. And on top of that, it was shot in 48 days.
Yes. A crazy tight budget, a crazy tight timeline, and then on top of that, everyone had to learn not only their lines, but their lyrical lines, which some of the actors had to learn 2 different sets because all of the singing in this is dubbed over. Pretty common thing for back in the day because if you want wind, you have to use a wind machine or a big fan.
Yeah.
And you can't get a boom mic close enough to the singer.
Yeah, and I think actually the whole movie ended up being dubbed over.
Definitely all of the singing questionable and some of the talking parts. But a lot more of the actors and actresses came back to re-sing their lines than was, kind of the standard at the time, but not everyone, which meant that some of them had to learn double parts, because now you have to sing it too.
True. So, as well, when you get into it, a lot of the backdrops, they were actually painted
painted scenes.
Well, to not fit this, or to fit the non-cinema scope, and so, they're not the greatest quality, I'll say.
No, and the other thing that, especially if you watch it knowing all of this, is a really fun game to play, is to see the questionable location and choices for the quote-unquote wildlife or farm life that gets placed, because they had to put it where you would be able to see it, because they weren't going to be able to do panning shots.
Yeah.
Because you would just be able to see the soundstage.
Yep.
So there's pigs in the front yard, not just because, they're dirty, mountain men boys and don't know any better, but because there was nowhere else to put the pigs and sheep. Yeah. And also, the director made lots of comments about the different birds that they have flying around to make it feel like it's outside. He was like, yeah, we wanted bigger birds or different birds, but the only birds we could get were these pigeons, so... Yeah,
the doves, and they kept flying into the backdrops.
Yeah, because they couldn't tell it was fake. Poor birds.
Yeah. And, so, now our main protagonist enters, and he is, at the same time, he is eyeing every pretty little thing he walks by.
If it has titties and is young, he is interested.
Yes.
To the point where he accidentally tries to swoo a mannequin.
Yes. Well, yeah, because that's during the first song.
Yes, Bless Your Beautiful Hide, which is my favorite.
Yeah. And so, one thing of note is that, this movie almost didn't have an original score either.
Yeah, that's true. They were going to use old, quote-unquote, old Westy sounding songs. And I don't know about you and your schooling, but as a Midwestern child, old Westy, folk songs, quote-unquote folk songs, were something that we got taught because they were easy music lessons for my tiny school. The vibe would have been so different.
Yeah,
the characters' intentions and feelings would have been completely gone.
Okay.
We would have just had the straight up, what you see on paper, creepy man, finds wife, steals wife, goes home, inspires brothers to do the same. And then on top of that, a lot of these folk songs are something that you think of as more kid songs, which would have changed the tone, I think.
Yeah, well, and so that's the thing. I don't know a lot of folky Midwestern songs.
Fair.
So...
Fair. A lot of them are... time period-wise would have been totally on point. And sound-wise and instrumental-wise would have been good.
But not fitting for a 50s musical.
No, Home on the Range would have sounded real stupid.
I know that one.
There you go.
Yeah, that would have sounded real stupid. So other thing of note is that the lyrics were actually done by Johnny Mercer, who I did not realize has done work for almost 1,000 movies.
He's a talented-ass man.
He is still going.
He is still chugging along. And the part that I thought was really interesting for this one is, unlike a lot of musicals where the lyrics are kind of written first, he actually got to work with, like, the lyrics, the music, and then the choreography, all of them worked together kind of simultaneously to create the scenes. Yeah. Which was not something that happened. No. It's still not something that happens.
No, and it's partly just because they didn't have any other option.
No, they had to work together all the time. But because of that, that's why the music and the choreography, a lot of people feel is still some of the best in musical history, is because they worked so closely together that everything feels natural, fluid, and it doesn't feel like a bunch of weird, like, lumberjack men suddenly dancing in the woods. It is. That's totally what it is. But it slides in nice and smooth.
Yeah. And because they were wanting to push generic songs, the studio was also trying to push, because I didn't know this, and we talked about it a little bit that one time. I think we're going to downtown to something Corinne, the pop-up ping pong bar.
Yeah.
Back when I had started doing the research on this, that they were trying to push dream sequences, which I guess were...
they're popular.
Yeah,
it was a thing for some reason.
I did not know about that.
It's not even just a thing for some things. They were, like, also trying to be a thing for musical, too. One of the weird ones that comes to my head is Fiddler on the Roof. For no good reason, has a weird dream sequence in it, I think. And it's been a while since I've seen that musical, so I could be getting it switched with another musical, but at the same time, there was an unnecessary amount of dream sequences. And they wouldn't be, like, long dream sequences. It'd just be, like, one song in a dream. Yeah. Good enough. That's it. That's all we wanted.
Interesting. Well, and I think part of the reason we didn't get a dream sequence either is because the choreographer, first of all, he didn't want to do this movie at all.
No, he had to be full on, like, pleaded to come work on it.
And eventually when he did say yes, he's like, no. He's like, fine, I'll do it. But there's not going to be dancing, because he could not see these big rugged men just bursting into song and dance.
The other challenge they had for the music and the choreography for this was MGM really didn't want to hire dancing men for this. They really wanted, like, standard actors for this movie, despite it being a musical. Like, they knew it was a musical from the get-go, but they were like, no, not dancers. Oh, no. So they agreed for the main lead, Howard Keel, because he advertised himself as a singer. For a singer and an actor first and foremost. And that's what he's known for. And then after that, MGM really pushed back on the cast that was chosen. They said, no, we really don't want to, which is why we have Howard Keel, not really a dancer, but he doesn't really have a dance number in this movie. He sings, he's the oldest brother, he's strong, manly man, don't need to dance to express his feelings. He's gonna go pout about them by himself. But then we also get, Jeff Richards, who's a former baseball player. Also not a dancer. He does a great job in this. Not a dancer.
Well, and I know they hid some of it where a lot of the pseudo dance numbers, or if there's any movement, the people who weren't trained dancers are generally sitting down and not participating.
Yeah, so he sat not participating for most of the movie, and we'll talk about that more later, because most of the female cast, despite not advertising themselves as dancers, were, and some of them were full-on ballerinas. With the exception of, I think, Russ Tamblyn, all of the rest of the men they snuck in as actual dancers, some of whom are ballet performers, which is why we get some really cool dance scenes later. But they got lucky with Russ because he was a former gymnast, and so he was able to do a lot of acrobatics that the dancers weren't comfortable doing because they're doing them on a barn. So they got away with only having the 2 male leads who really couldn't dance. Yeah. Despite MGM's best attempts.
Yeah, and I mean,
it was a fun loophole that the director's very proud that he found.
Yeah, and I think it works out just because, like, you don't need all of them dancing. And that's the one thing I do agree with this movie is, like, the singing moments fit.
Yes.
And I've always loved that part in Shaolin Soccer when they burst into song and then the old woman comes, or the shop owner comes in. What the hell are you guys doing?
What are you doing?
You're adults.
Why are you singing?
Who does this?
Yes.
Yeah. And so, our main protagonist, who we still don't have a name yet.
No.
After being rather obnoxious to the town folks.
He is. He is full on harassing people.
Yeah. He spies a woman chopping wood, and he is smitten.
He is smitten, and she fits his type because, as the song says, he wants someone who's just the right size, pretty and sweet, and sassy as can be. Which is perfect because she punches a man.
Yeah, in the bar.
In the bar that she works in.
Yep. And so, as he enters the bar, we find out that his love is named Millie.
Millie, a cute name.
She's eyeing him too.
Yeah, they have made a connection. It made such a connection that Millie just dumps Stu onto some random man's lap.
Yeah.
Which, as a child, I didn't realize that this was Stu. It wasn't until I was much older and I actually found subtitles, because I had a VHS copy of this.
Okay.
Forever. And VHS copies, unfortunately, do not come with subtitles. And so my dumb butt assumed that they were all eating, like, slop. Well, and I was like, slop looks delicious. Millie's slop looks amazing. And now as an adult, and I have subtitles, it clearly says stew. But she serves them stew on plates with a fork, and I have questions. Do people eat this like that?
I mean, I can see it with stew if it was soup. Because stew generally has...
I mean, it's thicker, but, like, fork thick?
I mean, maybe.
I've
had some thick stews.
They spend this whole little sequence playing up how amazing of a woman Millie is. Mm-hmm. She's strong, she can stand up for herself, she can chop wood and take care of run an entire bar by herself pretty much, and her cooking's amazing. And they spend all this time, everyone in town thinks Millie's cooking's amazing. But you can eat her stew with a fork. Is that just, have I been doing stew wrong all these years?
I guess so.
I gotta try making thick stew.
Fork stew.
Fork
thick stew. So, also side little history note in this. When he asks for ketchup.
Yes.
It is because I didn't know about this until a couple years ago.
Yes.
It is most likely mushroom ketchup.
Yes, tomato ketchup, much newer invention.
Yeah, it was still around, but we're still about 26 years out from F&J Heinz launching their first tomato ketchup.
And ketchup also was kind of just a word for, like, sauce. I think, like, a lot of us nowadays would consider, like, steak sauce just sauce that you put on things. Kind of the same idea.
Yeah. And so, back outside, Millie is milking a cow, and our main protagonist walks up and introduces himself as Adam Pontepee.
Such a nice last name that we'll never hear again.
As he, we do hear Pontepee a handful of times.
We do.
More derogatory
yes.
towards the brothers. And as he tries to woo Millie with his farmland and ultimately proposes to her, which
lucky she was also very much interested in him, because this interaction was a short-lived one, but I guess, back then, time was ticking. You were going to die any day now from dysentery. Gotta hurry.
Yeah. Well, I also like that he's like, I understand this is short, but if we were back in the city, I would have courted you for a couple of months. Then I would have asked to hold your hand. Then about another 6 months later, I'd have asked your pa for your hand in marriage, but we're out here in the frontier. We don't got that time.
And he's not wrong, because Millie's all out of paws, and he's all out of restaurants to take her to. Yeah. She owns the only one in town.
Well, or she works at.
She's the cook at least.
Yeah. And she is a little bit hesitant, but she does say yes only after she's finished her chores.
Yeah, she has to finish her chores before she can be whisked away to be married, which... Bless her.
Yes. Bless her beautiful hide.
Bless her beautiful hide.
And so, Adam decides to go shave and get ready for the marriage. His beautiful beard is now...
I am very sad by this. I liked this man's beard so much, and he just shaves it right on off, but at least he keeps the curly hair.
Yeah, the curly Q stash or whatever it's called.
It's a little hipstery nowadays. It's coming back, then 1850s style.
Yeah, my brother sent me a video, and a guy had an even bigger, like, full curl.
The full Spanish curl?
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. And So now isn't he humming Blush Your Beautiful Height as he's going back?
Yes, he is.
Yeah. And so back at Millie's house, the Reverend is not happy about the marriage.
Nope.
As they expected her to marry a village boy, and they know nothing about Adam, which they
should be. Well, they should know at least a little bit.
Yeah.
Adam's one of the local trappers, and it's assumed he comes in often enough to sell things, so at least a few times a year.
Yeah.
This isn't a big town. I feel like y'all should at least know about him.
No, they exist out there.
I mean, granted, probably don't know him as well as your town boys, but
no,
you should at least be like, oh, Millie, by the way, isn't that the dude who lives up there with all them brothers?
Yeah, I think they would know that by this point.
They would, but no one bothers to mention this to Millie.
Yeah, and how she responds as well is that she never had any feelings for the town boys, as she would date them, but like there was no spark.
They weren't her tall, rugged, red-headed men.
Yeah, they didn't have that manly factor.
They weren't her type.
To be fair, the town boys are kind of wusses throughout most of the movie.
Are not just wusses, but mean wusses.
Yeah.
Fight-starting wusses.
Yeah. Yeah. And, so now they are off to the mountains, that Millie, like you said, knows nothing about.
No, bless her.
While she explains that, she also doesn't have a lot out there. She has one dress and it's not quite fitting for a new bride.
I do like this because the costume designing for this movie, while not like show-stopping costume designing, is all very well thought out.
Yeah.
So Millie's, up until later on, once we've had more time for the homestead, quote unquote, to like get settled in, Millie has one dress, and it's the blue one, and it's got a really big patch on the front. But she's done it in such a way to make it look nice. It's like a little cross shape with the ends cut into diamonds. Very cute, but also clearly not like a new dress.
Yeah, which I think I mentioned that to Erica when I was watching it with her, and I think it just confused me a little bit. Because there are parts of her dress that feel decorative.
She clearly used the same fabric, because she probably made this dress herself. That was very common back then. There probably wasn't someone in town making clothes, unless you were very rich. And so she probably had leftover fabric from the collar that she made when it got a hole in it. She's like, well, I've already got some that matches. I'll just put a nice looking patch on it. There, my one outfit still looks okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
She's resourceful.
Yeah. And so she also mentions that she has brought her Bible and Plutarch's Lives, which...
her 2 books.
Yes, which, I mean, books are expensive back then, too,
yes,
still.
And, you know, a handful of books, even for a whole household, was pretty common.
And they were her dad's books that she gave to... or he gave to her before he passed,
yes.
kind of thing.
So they're sentimental on top of everything.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, Plutarch's Lives is actually important to this, because this is where the origin of this story comes from. It's actually a set of 48 bibliographies of famous Romans, and the story of the Sabine women is an adaptation of the Sabine women portion of Romulus. And how the story goes, and there is a little bit of potential mistranslation.
I mean, this is an ancient
history.
Roman myth, you know. I expect some has changed.
Yeah, the whole rape of the Sabine women is probably due to a misinterpretation of the word. I think it's the word rape.
Yes.
So it's...
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, and so the basic story of it is that Romulus, after founding Rome...
like you do.
Realized that there were too many men and not enough women, and if they wanted to have a steady population, they had to go to the countryside and steal the women from out there.
I see. So he can do basic math, but not basic, like, you know, civilization building. Didn't bribe anyone with, like, some income or free snacks. Was just like, nah, go grab them.
He is definitely running the military option instead of diplomacy.
This is the Rome that we have all learned to love.
Yes.
Militant.
Yeah. And so, while heading up to the mountain, Millie begins talking about the future she's going to have while everything's going to be great. And Adam also explains that that she needs to be a little bit quiet in this area in the winter.
Yeah, it's maybe a little bit avalanchy right around here.
Yeah.
I do like this scene, though, because we've gotten what Adam wants out of his first song, and now we get to know what Millie's expecting.
Yeah. Well, and we also are early on told that Adam is completely in the wrong with what he's looking for.
Yes.
From the shopkeeper who's saying, you're not looking for a wife, you're just looking for a worker kind of thing.
Which, if you read some of the original script, is completely correct. Mm-hmm. We find out from the script that Adam's mother and hired help has died.
Oh. And that's why he's down in town.
It's part of the reason. I don't remember them specifying how long it has been since either the hire help has died or run away. I'm gonna assume run away, because, that's too many people to cook and clean for if no one's helping you.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's part of the reason why there are, as far as we know right now, only one nasty man living in the woods by himself.
Yep.
Full bacheloring it up.
Yeah, because Millie says she's looking forward to the solitude. But, to be fair, Adam does try to tell her, but she breaks out into a song.
She does. He also, doesn't try that hard. You can see his gears turning where, he's got a moral compass of sorts. He knows that he probably should have told her already, but he was, A, too excited to find someone that, liked him back, and B, didn't want to run her off with the fact that, he has roommates.
Yeah. One bride for 7 brothers.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so, after Millie sings her song, I did not write down what the name of this song was.
It's okay.
She's also because they stopped to water their horses and she went to pick up sorrel for a soup.
Yes, so she's doing some fortune. She's resourceful, but she's also enjoying the flowers and the birds, and she's so excited to not be in town.
Yes. And, as the pair arrive at the farm, the brothers begin popping out of the woodworks, and
I didn't know you had a brother, and another one, and another one.
And I love this because as the more brothers appear, you can see Millie's hope die.
You really can.
As she finds out they all live in the cabin.
Yeah, I like how she asked, y'all live around here? And all of them go, no, here. We live here.
Yeah. And I think it's great too because she hasn't given up hope just yet.
No, there's an inkling that maybe with 7 brothers we can get more done. Maybe we can still have a nice happy family house. Mm-hmm. And then they open the door and there is legit just a chicken in their living room.
Yeah.
And when he puts her bag down on the table, a big ass cloud of dust just poofs out from underneath it.
Yeah, having lived with one of my brothers who is very messy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing that it has probably been a week or 2.
Since Mom is gone. Yeah, the mess in there is something fierce. The chimney and fireplace clearly have not been swept since the last time they were used, and probably before that, too. There is a thick layer of dirt on everything, and there's just livestock in the living room for no good reason. Yeah,
I feel her because, on vacation, I went to use that particular brother's shower.
Uh-huh.
And,
how'd that go?
Well, he had a bottle of body lotion.
Uh-huh.
Or not body lotion,
like the 3-in-1?
Or he had shampoo, but he also had a bottle of
body wash?
Body wash, that's what it's called. I use a soap bar still, so
soap
I don't have body wash. But the bottle was empty.
Uh-huh.
And I guess he was expecting me to use his hand soap. The pump hand soap.
To wash yourself?
To wash myself.
I mean, at least he didn't have a 3-in-1 bottle. I'll wash myself with shampoo, conditioner, body soap. Head to foot. All in one go.
My body carpet is all nice and silky smooth.
Yeah, these brothers definitely would have subscribed to that statement. It's very reminiscent of the first time Snow White goes in to see the 7 dwarves. It is... Yeah. About the same level of filth, and about the same level of filth on the boys, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, speaking of the brothers, we learn all their names, that all she has to do is remember the ABCs.
Yes, I think this is so cute. Clearly their mother was a woman similar to Millie. Clever, resourceful, but had a sense of humor. Because she named her sons biblical names, which would common back in the time. That would have been a thing. So she started at A and went with Adam, Benjamin, Caleb, Daniel, Ephraim, Frank, and Gideon. And Frank is my favorite.
Because we learn Frank is short for frankincense.
Because his mom couldn't find an F name in the Bible.
Because, and I saw, I think it was a factoid on IMDb that in the Old Testament, there's not an F. In the New Testament, there's like 2 F names.
Yes. And the Old Testament, especially at this time period, would have probably been the one everyone focused on. Yeah. That just would have been kind of the cultural norm. That would have been the church's norm.
Fire and brimstone.
Yeah, and also just the old rules, the old stories. They're a little bit more tall-tale-y. They're a little bit more fable-y. A little bit more to take out of from that sense, especially since you probably didn't go to church every Sunday unless you lived in town.
Yeah.
So...
No. Or if they've ever gone to church. I don't know if these brothers have been to church.
Their mom might have been church.
Yeah.
Because when Millie walks into the kitchen, and it is a disaster zone in there.
Yeah. Well, so before that, the brothers actually start fighting because they're explaining frankincense's name. And just explaining it pisses him off.
Yeah, the tempers are short here.
Yeah. And now Adam proceeds to show her around the house as she learns that she's there to work. On her day of marriage.
Yeah. Oh, poor girl.
Yeah, but I will give it to her. She is a pioneer woman.
Oh,
She sets to work. She is going to prove herself.
Yes, and I like as Millie goes, the optimism isn't endless, unbridled optimism like what we saw with Snow White. Mm-hmm. Her optimism is, okay, clearly they need help. I'm going to try and prove to them that, A, I'm a good fit for the family. I'm going to try and get along with everyone, even though they're out there brawling in the middle of the living room. We can still try and get this to function somehow. And then that changes a little later.
Yeah. And I think it also just shows that generally portrayed in movies, women are the more adaptive of the sexes.
Yeah, clearly the boys didn't bother to learn how to wash their hands when their mother died.
No. And so, speaking of dinner, as she rings the dinner bell, the brothers come in and start digging in like animals, and Millie responds in turn by turning the table over and running from the room as Adam laughs at the whole thing.
Yeah, which I think this is probably the best response that they could have written for this movie, because we've already established that she doesn't have a trouble standing up for herself, and she also is a real person. She is so angry, she flips the table on them and is locking herself in. There's only 2 bedrooms in this house. The master, and then the one all the boys have to sleep in. Yep. And she locks herself in the master. Yeah,
and on top of that, the boys ate off the floor.
This is not the first time they've eaten off the floor, but this is the first time they've eaten good food off the floor.
Exactly. And so, after the whole dinner fiasco, the brothers are all downstairs nudging each other, eyeing Adam with that knowing glance.
Come on, Adam, there's only 2 bedrooms in this house, and she's in one of them. Aren't you going to bed?
You're married. This is the only action we're going to hear all winter.
Come on, Adam. Aren't you going to go say hi to your new wife? Who's pissed as hell at you?
Say hi in a very friendly manner.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I will note during the commentary, the director sounded so sad and defeated when he talked about like how if this movie was filmed now 20 years ago from his commentary, how sad or how different it would be, or how not
the humor
subtle.
Yeah, his quote unquote subtle is maybe less subtle nowadays than I think.
Well,
but at the same time, the humor in this, minus a couple of scenes, is very much humor of the 1950s.
Yeah.
Like, you see it throughout a bunch of other, not just movies, but TV shows, different musicals, the radio shows, and this sort of nudge, nudge, wink, wink sort of answer to marital times.
Yeah.
Was pretty much the standard for, like, sex humor. This was pretty much a good standard, like, middle ground bar.
Yeah, and I get where he's coming at, because nowadays it'd be like, I'm a I'm gonna make her a wife.
Yes, but I also think, in the director's commentary, I like this as well, because clearly, especially at the beginning half of this movie, he and the writers worked really hard to make sure that that Adam and Millie were both people with rounded emotions, not just, I am manly man, you're my wife, let's go. He's supposed to be, at least according to the director, he's supposed to be nervous. He's supposed to not really know what to do now. That's why he's still downstairs.
I don't know what to do with my hands.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with my hands. Because clearly she's mad. This isn't how he thought it was going to go. He knows this, but at the same time, he also knows he has to eventually go talk to her, and that's the room he's supposed to sleep in. So his gears are going.
What? Because there's no sex ed at this time. What is the birds and the bees talk of that time era?
For ladies, it was pretty straightforward, because most girls would have had to help with the birthing process. So you would have been maybe not told a lot of details, but the gossip would have gotten around, and you would have probably known. Boys, on the other hand, don't have to participate in that unless you were, for some reason,
Their job is to deliver the seed.
Yeah, but at the same time, at this time period in Oregon, the understanding of how, biology worked wasn't super there, and we'll see that a little later on, but yeah, they would have known probably the rough mechanics, but, the full, how things function, the boys probably wouldn't know. Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense. Just an odd topic that I've never thought to explore.
Yeah, back then, especially if you're out as far as these people are, there is no doctor. And doctors back then weren't really who you wanted to deliver your baby anyway, because the mortality rate with them versus a midwife was much higher.
They were doctor dentists.
They were doctor dentists, and they were male doctor dentists.
Yes.
Who maybe saw a vagina once when their wife let them.
Yes. And so now it is time for wedding nuptials. But Millie isn't having it.
No, she is not in bed, nor is she undressed. She is rocking angrily in the rocker.
Yep.
She has a determined face on. She's been thinking this problem over, and she has an answer.
But what I really like about the scene is that she is upfront about her disappointment. She's not catty or beating around the bush.
No. This is part of the reason why, for me, this movie does hold out.
Mm-hmm.
Because of Millie. Because Millie, from the get-go, she tried to make it work. Adam explains in this scene, well, I didn't tell you about my brothers because I thought you'd run off and wouldn't want to marry me. She goes, well, you still should have told me. I'm still pissed. I'm not sleeping with you tonight. I'll work next to you. I agreed to this marriage. I still think you're hot, but I'm not sleeping next to you. You get to sleep somewhere else.
Yeah, your working woman deserves a room of her own.
Yeah.
And
a fair statement on her behalf.
Yeah. And I do like Adam's Adam's upfrontness as well, that he does love her.
Yeah.
And he has those feelings there, but this is the reality of the world they live in, that
yes.
He agrees he should have told her, but he
maybe
tried.
Yeah, not that hard.
No.
But this is part of Adam's growth arc, is Adam's understanding of how to treat others is a huge part of the arc of this movie. How well he does at it is questionable, but at least in this scene, he's also understanding enough to still exhibit that he's embarrassed to his brothers. He's not going to admit to them that he's in the doghouse and isn't allowed to sleep in his own bed.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes downstairs to grab a pitcher because, quote unquote, she's thirsty.
Yeah, she is.
Brings a pitcher of water back up, and then climbs out the window into a tree so that his brothers can't see him.
Well, no, he crawls out the tree because he's going to sleep there because there's nowhere else for him to go. All the beds are taken up in the attic space. It's the only other bed in the house.
So he says, this is a little self-pitying, though.
Yeah,
there's other places, like the downstairs bench, that he could totally go sleep on, but he doesn't want his brothers to know that he's been outed.
It's very much so, alright, I'll just go to the bathroom and take care of it myself.
Yeah, it's also very much the oh, I got told no, I'm gonna go lay down in the ditch and die.
Why is it a little sad that I could see Brian moping a little bit like this?
I think it's just a very standard, mope tactic to just, I've been defeated. Death upon me. And Adam exudes that very beautifully.
Yes, he does. And it does work because
it does work.
She realizes like the little bit of...
She still loves him.
Yeah, she realizes that they're both being selfish.
Yeah, and I think at some point we also can see her mind change, where she is not going to give up on this problem. Yeah, she failed the first time, but you can see that her gears have been turning. She looks at her books when she comes back to the room. She looks at herself in the mirror, and she's going to come up with a plan this time. Mm-hmm. Because heaven forbid these boys beat her. Yeah. She's going to win.
Yeah, because in the morning, the brothers wake up and they smell fresh food and...
fresh bacon.
Coffee.
Ooh, hot coffee.
They sound like hobbits.
They do sound like hobbits.
And they're like, oh yeah, Adam has set Millie straight. Yeah.
Oh, right. And then they realize none of them can find their day clothes.
Yeah. And that's because Millie is actually the one in charge.
Yes, she is. Millie has crept in at probably like 2 a.m, because I bet you $10 Millie didn't go to bed at all last night.
I bet neither of them did.
No, I think Adam slept in the tree like a squirrel, and Millie has been cleaning this house all night.
Adam comes back in the house.
He must have.
Because remember, he flops on the bed and it breaks?
Oh, yes, he does flop on the bed and it breaks. I still bet, though, that Millie has been awake since like 2 a.m, because when we get down there, that kitchen is spotless. Yeah. And there is flapjacks and coffee, which she must have had to grind herself. Well,
and she's also saying that she'll go in there and she'll take the clothes off them herself.
Yeah, because those undergarments, or long johns, or whatever you want to call them, have definitely not been washed in a long time. So long that dear sweet baby Gideon can't remember how to take them off.
Gideon's probably grown up in that one onesie.
I think Gideon has never exited this onesie.
Yes. And so, now at breakfast, they are covered in blankets because they are still ashamed.
They are all naked because their clothes are outside drying, because this is pre-washer and dryer ages.
Yep, you gotta wind dry that shit.
You gotta wait.
And Millie is complimenting them that she's never seen them around before, and they're such handsome boys.
She's also convinced them all to shave and theoretically wash their faces and hair. And yeah, when they're all shaved up, they're a good-looking bunch of boys.
Yeah. Good old boys. But I like this just because it's this little build-up, because Millie is definitely enacting a plan of her own. And I think at this point, her plan is to get the brothers married off.
So they live somewhere else.
Yeah, so that way she can have Adam to herself.
I don't blame her. This isn't a bad plan.
No, it's not. Because Millie's next action is she's going to go to town.
And boy, the boys want to go to town too. That sounds fun.
I wonder why. And the whole time they are ogling the woman, and they try to do some wooing of their own, but
they fail massively. One of them offers a lady chewing tobacco. Yeah. Nasty.
And they're insulted because it's good chewing tobacco.
And so, of course, a fight breaks out. And do any of the brothers help stop it? Well, no, there's only 3 of them. 3 little ones. Yeah. He's got it.
Yeah, and they eventually break the general store window.
Which back then would have been a very expensive break.
I saw
that glass would have had to come all the way from the East Coast.
Oh, it would have been...
from St. Louis, probably. On wagon. Yeah. I don't know if the railroads would have been open at this time or not, but even still, it's not coming the next day.
No, glass still wasn't very cheap, but it's cheaper.
Yeah, oof. So they break the store window, like the dumbasses they are. And of course now, if the townsfolk didn't hate them before, they hate them now.
Yeah, because we've learned their reputation is a little bit justified.
Oh, yeah. As we've quickly learned, no one's taught these boys manners. Ever.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because right after Millie yells at them and
tells them to get back in the car, goddammit.
Yeah. She begins trying to socialize the boys while...
This is a bit like her adopting pit puppies and trying to get them to go to the dog park and be nice.
Yeah, well, Adam taunts them the whole time.
Adam is not helping.
No.
Adam is probably the worst out of all of them.
Adam is the ringleader.
He really is. And honestly, up until probably recently, Adam hasn't had to properly lead the family. His mom probably did that. And she probably also didn't get to go into town to do anything.
Well, he's probably been leading the family for a while, because let's be honest, if his father's been gone for a while, he's the man of the household.
He's the man of the household. But if you're out in the woods, and we can only assume that the mom was the one holding this place together, Adam in his head might have been, quote-unquote, running the show, but he clearly didn't actually do anything.
Yeah, because he's still not doing shit.
No,
he
is still a bro.
Yeah, exactly. And so now we have the next musical number of Goin' Courtin'.
Another delightful song.
Which has a little bit of a dance, and two of the men are sitting down the whole time.
Because they can't dance. This is also a hard shot, or a hard dance and song number to shoot, because we're inside the main living room, which is a fairly big living room for a cabin, for a hand-built cabin in the middle of the woods. But it's not big enough for a proper, stage dance with 8 people.
Yeah.
That's a lot of dancers.
No. And just one thing I do want to mention about the commentary of this is that they talk about how in musicals you have to suspend disbelief as to why people would break out into songs, and that's my biggest issue with musicals in general.
Yeah, and that's kind of for the most part, there's a few exceptions, but for the most part, that is the generic musical rule. Similar rules apply to animated movies.
Yeah, well, but what I wanted to say about specifically this scene and a couple scenes in this movie, this feels like a natural musical moment.
It does, and that's one of the things that this movie was praised really heavily on. Is, with the exception of maybe one scene. One dance and song number, most of the songs and dances feel like they occur fairly naturally.
And I am on the other side where there's only a couple that I feel occur naturally, like him singing and gawking at the people when he's in town.
Yeah.
I understand some people breaking out into song and whatnot.
Sure.
I do appreciate that the choreographer was like, we are not dancing. We are not dancing,
despite having multiple very talented ballet people on this set.
Yeah. And so, after they've been introduced to how to be civil...
Yes, she's now attempted to teach them some manners.
We cut to the brothers looking all prettied up.
They've all got shirts.
I think I described it to you when I was... getting ready to design the logo for this episode. I referred to them as the Pioneer Power Rangers.
That is exactly what they are. Each brother has a different color shirt so that we can spot him against townsfolk real well, because of course the townsfolk wear blazers and little ties, and mostly brown.
They dress like the stereotypical architect.
Yeah.
Old-timey architect.
Old-timey architect.
Yeah.
Which, was fashionable at the time. So, yeah.
Yeah. And, why have the Pioneer Power Rangers assembled?
Well, they're going to a barn raising. A good place for them to test their socializing skills.
Yeah. And at the raising, as the boys arrive, they are eyed by the women of the town who are... The men are pissed off about this because the women immediately go over to say hi to Millie, not the boys, but you know why they're over there.
So it's made very clear that Millie and the girls in town are very close. They probably see her a bit as a big sister.
Yeah.
And so they are coming over under the disguise of saying hi to Millie, with the youngest one being the exception, who seems to be very attached to Millie.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they all get in line to, quote-unquote, help carry things off the... Because, of course, Millie, being the proper lady she is, has made potluck food.
Yeah.
So she's made tea and cookies and pies.
Well, we also learned we learned later on that probably the reason she's so attached to Millie is because they lived in the same house.
Yeah, this is the Reverend's daughter.
Yeah, it's hinted at that they lived in the same house.
Yeah, and so each brother now gets a chance to walk each fair lady back to the dessert table to put the treats on.
Yeah, even though there's no food for Gideon to cure, he's just like, all right,
but I'll walk you back.
I'll walk you.
Oh, how cute. And it's going really well.
She's enacting what Adam wanted to do to her.
Yes.
So she's kind of living vicariously through the brothers as well.
She definitely is. She's definitely trying to give them the courting opportunity that she didn't get to have with Adam. It's implied that she got to court some of the local boys, the town boys, but she didn't like any of them. Probably didn't go on a second date. Probably didn't get to the hand-holding stage. Probably just, supervision, went out, walked around a little bit, and came home.
Yeah.
That was a date back then.
Nice and sweet.
Nice and sweet. And so she has pulled out all the stops, because not only did she bring them all gussied up, but she brought a ton of food to this potluck too. She is trying to win the townsfolk over. She is trying to do this the right way. Because if you can win the paws over, well then we're set.
Yeah.
We're ready to go. She knows the Reverend. She lived in his house for how long?
It's all part of their plan.
It's all part of Millie's plan.
Yeah. And so now the pre-barn raising festivities begin as we are treated to a musical dance in what I refer to as the pioneer version of You Got Served.
Yeah, it is. I like this dance number, the barn raising dance scene, for a number of reasons. A, it's the longest dance scene in the movie, and it's arguably a long dance scene for any musical.
Yeah.
This goes on for a long time, mostly because they had to do a lot of it in one cut.
Yeah.
And at the time, the director in his commentary mentioned that he was still really new to the whole musical directing thing, and so he didn't really understand that he could film more than what he was going to use and then cut it out.
Yeah.
So he filmed everything he thought he might need and then tried to keep it all.
Yeah, well, and that also just might be because he knew his budget was constrained, so...
Yes, and I'm not saying it was the wrong choice.
Yeah.
I love the final outcome, but, it's long.
Oh, yeah.
This dance scene's long, but it does flow naturally, because a barn raising, especially a full town event one, would have probably started with a dance. You've got an open foundation, pretty good dance floor. Start with a dance. Yeah. And so we do. We start off with a nice, genteel dance.
Yeah, and they're actually pretty cool. I mean, there's a lot of really good movements. So,
the choreography in this is really good, because this is one of the few dance scenes that kids choreographed to be a dance sequence, as opposed to
dancing for the sake of movement.
Well, and he also tried really hard to get the choreography to feel like it was an action the brothers would normally do, like chopping wood or dealing with farm animals or chores.
Arm wrestling to prove who's the strongest.
Yeah, brawling.
Yeah.
This is an actual full dance sequence. And so he got to lean into not only the dance that would have been popular at the time, but also pull a tiny bit from his ballet background. Yeah. Which shows off because it makes this feel a little bit more interesting to watch than if it had just been typical square dance or hoe dance.
Yeah, exactly. And so at the end of the dance number, the women have chosen the Pioneer Power Rangers.
They've chosen the brothers. And they did everything by the book. Millie's full approval. They cut in at the right moment. Nobody fought nobody. Yep. Everyone held each other back, and they won.
They kind of fought.
I mean, they got close.
Yeah.
They didn't fight according to the brother standards.
They did arm wrestling.
Well, that's a little later.
No, it's in that dance number when because they get up on the planks and
that's a little later in the dance sequence. We've gotten to the end of the formal dance. And now it's barn raising time. No,
that was all part. I know which part you're talking about. I'm talking, this is still going on in that dance number.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, when they're shimmying back and forth on the...
Yeah, that's later.
No, this is all still in that moment, because when the barn raising happens, the townspeople, the townsmen are actually pissed off at the boys at that point. Okay. So they are doing that. There's that little bit of competition between them.
But it's still civil.
Yeah.
No one's thrown a punch
It's
yet.
still fun and games at this point.
Yes.
There's one part where they're about to, but they just shake. They
shake it out.
That's when they start doing the arm wrestling.
There we go. Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, gotcha.
And so now it is time for the raising. One little detail that they made sure to note in the commentary is that whoever gets their side of the barn raised first, they'll get a heifer.
Yes.
The little detail that they hid in the scene is that they missed later on in the movie is that the heifer is picked up in a very difficult and awkward manner to hide It's penis.
Because it's not.
A boy.
Yeah, it's a boy. But no one really cares.
No. But I did notice something later on that I will bring up.
Okay.
And so, while the raising's going on, the town boys begin hurting the Ponape boys.
On purpose. Them dirty bastards.
And Adam is chewing them out because they're not behaving like he wants them to.
No, he wants them to throw a punch back so they can win.
Yeah,
because his ladies told him she wants this calf.
Yeah, and they're like, no, we told Millie we'd be civil, and he's like, well, whatever, you'll die. I don't give a shit.
Go break your neck.
Yeah, but once they start taking it out on Adam, is when the boys are pushed over the limit.
Yep, they can put up with anything to themselves. But don't you dare hurt our brother.
Yeah.
He didn't make the promise to Millie.
No. And I love, like, how unwavering Adam's masculinity is in this movie.
Quote-unquote masculinity, yes. He is, up until, like, literally the last scene, hanging on to the old way.
Yeah.
He arguably, at the beginning, had the most manners out of all the boys. But he doesn't improve like the brothers do.
No, we kind of learned that Adam's manners are very basic and not, like,
no.
altogether there.
No, he's a little childish.
Yeah. And, like, also, like, we talked about how long the dance sequence is.
Yes.
The fight sequence is pretty long in this one, too. It is.
But this is one of the few times that a fight sequence was co-directed by the choreographer and the director. Mm-hmm. They didn't have a different guy come in to do the fight choreography. Kids did both the dancing and the fighting, along with the director and the musical score and the lyricist all at the same time, which shows, because while it is definitely brawl, it definitely feels planned out. Not in the same way that, like, Pirates of the Caribbean did, where it was almost like... It was impressive when it came out, and now that it's been out for a while, everyone's like, wow, that's a little cringy.
Yeah.
This feels like a natural brawl, but everything feels like a controlled chaos.
Yeah, I mean, for the time, too, like, I don't think we really had fight choreographers, either.
Not like we do today, for sure. And also, like, I think the director was saying that the fight scenes for this was also really hard because we've got, like, I think 14 people on set. More
than 14, because the mayor, or the guy that they're raising the barn for, and a handful of the older men come in to break up the fight.
Yeah, so we've got close to, like, 15 to 20 some people who all need to be in old-timey square frame, theoretically. Granted, they shot it both ways, but still, like, there's a lot of people to fight choreograph into a small screen.
Oh, yeah. And it's fun.
I love it. The fight scene is hilarious. The amount of, like, and you can watch it a bunch of different times and see who gets punched at different moments. Because there's always the main action flowing through the scene. But everyone is constantly brawling. It's not like how nowadays we, like, have a gang and they're all standing around waiting and, oh, thank goodness the bad guys go one at a time. There's no one at a time anymore. We're going as groups.
Yeah, it made me think, because when I was on vacation, I bore my family with all the movies I talk about. It just makes me think of the fight scene the hallway fight scene in Old Boy.
It does.
And then Spike Lee, how he completely fucked that up because, like, they start kind of coming at him one at a time. He's got a lot of space, whereas, like, the original is tight and confined, and that's why he's only, like, fighting one or two at a time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I also like the use of the set and scenery. The director said that he talked to the prop guy for this and asked him, hey, we're going to have a barn raising scene, there's going to be dancing, and then we're going to have a fight on it. Can you go get anything that would probably be part of this? So saws, axes, sawhorses, lumber, anything, and bring it on so I can figure out what we're going to do. Because, again, they didn't have a whole lot of pre-prep time for this.
Yeah.
And so the set guy came back with a truckload of stuff, like a big truck, and was like, all right, delivery, dump.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, and... I mean, honestly, I don't think they really used a lot of that stuff. Like, it just kind of sits in the background. Like,
it does, but it does add to the atmosphere, and I like the creativity they got with, like, the boards up high, they got up into the rafters, they broke through the walls, they're throwing people through the windows. It's not just happening in the barn, it's happening to the barn.
Yeah. No, yeah.
They are also fighting the barn.
Yeah, because normally, and to be fair, I haven't seen a lot of action stuff from this era.
Sure.
But, like, we don't really think of environments in fight scenes a lot, where especially like the old time ones I've seen where it's just like they start duking it out like on the street.
It's a lot of like, if we're going to interact with the environment, like maybe one chair gets broken and maybe we throw a guy out the window. Mm-hmm. But they full on take the barn down.
Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of always wondered if they were forced to stay and put it all up themselves.
Well, I think they got asked sternly to leave because as the barn does fall, only the Pioneer Power Rangers are standing.
And Millie looks livid. Oh. Absolutely livid. It's going to be a long, silent, judgmental ride home.
Yes, but because the next scene we cut back to the home and they're licking their wounds. Yeah. And they're a bit heartbroken.
Yeah, because they've now probably lost the favor with the ladies.
Yeah, but at the same time, we see a little bit of a change in Millie, too, because she understands why they did it, because she's watching them get the shit beat out of them.
And she knows they tried.
And they only stepped in when Adam, who had nothing to do with it,
the one who already had a wife.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Adam, this is the part where we see Adam is a little bit more self-centered than we originally thought. He definitely thought of the barn raising for him and his wife, and not necessarily as a stage where if the boys acted well, even if they don't win, they might, win the father's approval sort of thing.
Yeah, it's like a heart event in Harvest Moon.
Exactly.
You have to say the right things to increase that friendship value.
Exactly. And so while she is definitely livid, she's clearly not livid with the boys.
No. And we also have a little bit of a tender moment with Adam. Yeah. Because Gideon explains that he thinks he's in love, but Adam in his nicest way tells him there'll be others.
Says the man who's literally met one woman and married her.
That we know of. And so, I was just...
It feels very much like Adam is regurgitating advice that someone else told him. Mm-hmm. That, like, granted, maybe courted one other lady, or like had his eye on one other person, and then fill in reason here, didn't work out. Yeah. And so someone, probably his father, was like, well, there's other fish in the sea, son, don't worry too much about it. Yeah. And to be honest, Gideon, there's not. You live in the middle of fuck all.
Yeah, you're in the pioneer days.
You're lucky there's enough women in this town for all of you boys.
I mean, yeah. It makes me think of, again, back to Harvest Moon and Story of Seasons. Like, when you do marry that someone, there's not, like, an alternate for, like, your counterpart for that partner. And it's like, when I was little, I was always a little bit sad about that.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, after Millie looks over Adam being sweet to his youngest brother. Yeah. We cut to winter, where the brothers are horribly chopping wood and singing about being lonesome polecats.
Yeah, this is the polecat song, and I would argue that while the choreography for this is phenomenal, this song to me feels the least authentic, like the least natural song.
I completely agree.
This one sticks out like such a freaking sore thumb. Partially because we get some beautiful classical style choreography for the song from four of the brothers. The four that can dance.
Kind of. So, beautiful in a theater sense.
It is very theatrical.
I showed this to Philip, and he was so pissed off.
Yes. Yeah, I can understand why. If you understand that the four who get the most dance time for this went on to be incredibly famous Broadway, ballet, and dancing performers, then it makes a little bit more sense. Yeah. We get a few cool swings from our gymnast, and we get a few good lyrics from our baseball player, but for the most part, this is by far the most awkward of all the songs. Yeah. But it does play a point. I think if the song was removed, the movie would suffer. Not necessarily visually. I think we could have done this differently. Yeah. But the amount of time this movie takes to go over, especially for a movie, especially for a musical, especially for back then, this is a very long timeline for a movie. So we've gone from probably early summer, since everyone's wearing long sleeves, to beginning of winter. So
Or autumn to winter.
Autumn to winter, so like October, November, probably?
Yeah, because... Yeah,
it's been months, and the boys probably haven't gotten to go see these ladies since.
Yeah.
Because they've probably been banned from town.
All they have to hear in the night is just Adam and Millie having their fun.
Yeah, probably. And also, it's given the boys time to realize that, hey, they messed up. They let Adam ruin their fun. And at the same time, they've fallen more in love with these ladies. They've had time to think about it and miss them, and, as best we can interpret, fall more in love. Granted, is that a modern day interpretation? No. But, for Oregon Trail in the 1800s, why not?
Yeah. And despite the choreography being hella dumb, and none of these people knowing how to actually chop wood.
No, not at all.
This whole scene was done in one take.
It was. It is very impressive.
As well, there was a part that was removed. Something about sleeping with sheep.
Yeah, so this is the other part that the censors weren't happy about. Mm-hmm. And so the censors weren't happy with the phrase, men can't sleep when they sleep with sheep. And the lyricist has explained that he was trying to say that, like, they live on a barn and later on they get banished to the barn. Yeah. But that could be misunderstood. Yeah. You don't really want to, do it with sheep. And so they didn't remove the line. The line's still in the song. But what they did do was make sure that every single sheep that shows up in the movie is in a pen and nowhere near where the boys sleep. Yes. So no sheep in the barn.
Yep. And speaking of animals, for those who don't know, a polecat is a ferret-like animal. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. They're hella cute. Yes. Yeah. And so, after their stupid bit's done.
Yes, after their stupid pining for these ladies is over.
Benjamin now tells Millie that this is his last winter. He's heading out because he's tired of the snow. But Millie knows that they're all heartbroken and tries to explain to Adam that they're missing their women.
Yes, and I think this is the part where we learn more about how dumb Adam is. Because clearly Millie is trying to, be like, hey, we should take the boys into town and, maybe see if they could go on a date.
Yeah, and Adam just they only met them a couple of times.
They'll be fine. And she's like, no, they're gonna leave if we, don't find them someone else to hang out with other than you.
Yep. And, we also learned that, Millie's dreams have changed. And the reason she's telling him this, because before she probably would have been like, all right, cool.
Bye-bye. Have
but
fun.
Now her dreams have changed in a short time, that she wanted, she wants the families around. She wants a bunch of children.
She likes having the brothers around. She's bonded with them clearly. She clearly sees them as her own younger brothers. She spent a lot of effort picking them up out of the dirt. Yeah. And so she would like them all to live nearby. Yeah. Maybe not in her house, but nearby.
Neighboring farmlands.
Neighboring land. Instead of, moving down to California.
Yeah. And, so now Adam goes to the barn to give the boys a pep talk.
And Adam does the dumbest thing he ever could.
Through the song that has been stuck in my head for a week. Yeah. Because it is a catchy song.
It is a very catchy song.
He explains to them that, they're gonna do as the Romans did and follow through with the Sabin women's story.
In other words, Adam does know how to read. Surprise. Mm-hmm. I didn't see that coming. And he's been reading the only other book Millie brought instead of the Bible. Yeah. He's been reading this Roman book, which I bet you anything, Millie's father bothered to sit down and explain the stories to her and the different, as best he could. It probably would have been something of an educational book. Most books played double duties back then, which is why the Bible went around for everything, because they used it as a reading tool, a teaching tool, morals tool, whole 9 yards. So I bet you her father also did that with this book, which is why there's just the two. And I bet you Adam read this one by himself.
I wouldn't doubt it.
I don't think Adam bothered to fully understand the actual story's morals and what it would have been used to teach.
Yeah, and for someone whose wife's in charge, Adam talks a big talk.
Adam talks a big talk when his wife isn't looking.
Like that Key and Peele sketch.
Yes.
I said, bitch.
Adam is that.
Yep.
That is Adam in a nutshell. Is that sketch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he gets all of his brothers all riled up because in this book, back in the ancient days, it worked for the Romans, so why wouldn't it work for us, says the man without running toilet water. We should just go capture the ladies, and they'll be sad, but secretly they're happy. The book said so, and it will all work out.
To be fair, at the time the story was written, they didn't have running toilet water either.
No, but the Romans would have.
No, the Sabin women happened during the founding of Rome.
I see.
Yeah.
Still behind.
Still behind. And so, now hyped up, the brothers decide that they're gonna kidnap the girls in a very, Scooby-Doo manner.
It is so Scooby-Doo-y. We also see, clearly the girls, when the few who do get to see who's kidnapped them, are like, oh, it's you, I'm so happy to see, why are we being kidnapped?
Well, like, why are you here?
Yeah, because
we haven't seen you in months.
Because clearly they've been banished from the town. And
clearly Gideon is a dipshit.
Bless his little heart. Yeah, Gideon's a dumbass. He sits under a windowsill going, and I quote, meow, meow, meow. It is not even a convincing cat noise.
No, not at all.
But his love's dumb mother is like, Nancy, I think, is the girl that he's paired with. Her is like, the cat must be outside. Can you go get it?
Yeah.
What noise does your cat make, lady?
I mean, to be fair, I meow at my cats as Charlie sits there and just stares at us.
Yes, but Charlie at no point has ever gone, meow.
He's been close. But, and this is the part I mentioned earlier, because as she gets kidnapped, the cat jumps up on the mother's lap and she says, look, she's here.
Yes.
And clearly there was a ball sack on the cat.
Yeah. That's okay.
Yeah.
The cat doesn't know.
No, the cat doesn't give a shit.
The cat gives no shits. It's inside, not outside, freezing its butt off.
Yeah. So, now they, have kidnapped the women. They're
back to the house.
Chase scene.
And we get one of our only scenes not filmed on a stage set.
Yes. All the close-ups are filmed on the set.
Yes.
But there were some shots in Oregon with, a different cast. It was backup cast. They didn't have the original actors for that. Yeah.
But you can't tell because the camera's far away.
No, exactly. That's the whole point. And so, while they're running, the townspeople have started shooting at them, triggering an avalanche, and now they are trapped by the snow.
Can't get back. The director was really proud of this avalanche scene, too. They had to build a miniature because, of course, back then he didn't have free access to good footage of an avalanche from the angle he wanted.
I wonder if professional avalanche creators were a thing at this time, even.
I'm sure, the ones who, go and make avalanches to protect towns and stuff, I'm sure that was probably a thing. I don't think it's the science it probably is today.
Yeah.
But he was so proud of this, fake avalanche mock-up and shots that he had that he's bothered to keep track of all of the times he's seen it appear in other movies. His little avalanche model.
Which is impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, so now back at the home, the women are truly sobbing.
They are so upset, and Millie could not be angrier.
Millie is so pissed.
So pissed, she banishes the boys from the house. They cannot come inside.
No. And even Adam cannot come inside because they're going to sleep with the animals.
Because they are animals.
And Adam's response is they're like, oh shit, we didn't kidnap the pastor.
Yeah, I like how that one of them goes, oh, we can't get married. We didn't kidnap the pastor. And Millie's like, good, get.
Yep.
Leave.
And so, like a spoiled child.
Because that is what we've learned Adam is.
Adam is a stubborn jackass and decides
he's gonna go up to their hunting lodge way up north and spend the winter up there by himself.
Because he's a man.
And also throws the biggest pity me parties I've ever seen.
Yeah.
He's gonna run away until Millie feels bad and he's gonna freeze to death.
Yeah, or if the wolves will get him first.
Because that will be better company than Millie, and he's not technically wrong. But
at this point, yeah.
She is that mad right now, but at the same time, this seems like a drastic turn of pity me instead of say I'm sorry.
Yeah. And so Gideon tries to warn Millie.
And Millie says he has to learn some way. And
yeah.
she's right.
Yeah. Adam talks the big talk.
Adam talks the big talk. And in Millie's head, she's like, yeah, he can stay up there for how long? We're in Oregon? 6 months? Okay, bye.
Yeah, he'll be fine. He'll be back when the pass is open.
Yep.
Yeah. And
she's like, and in the meantime, I'll have the whole bed to myself. This is going to be great.
Yeah. I mean, there are some things I have questions about later on, but
okay.
I'll save that for when we get to it.
Okay.
But now the girls, stuck in their situation, decide to take revenge in their own way.
Yes, they aren't allowed to leave the house, and the boys aren't allowed to come in the house, but they can throw things at the boys from the house.
Yeah, or pour water on them.
Yes, and so they get their sweet revenge, and months pass.
Well, also, side note, the snow at this point was made with plastic.
Yes.
And they said it was awful.
They said it tasted and smelled terrible.
Yeah.
But the snowballs that they throw were made out of real snow. They just kept them in the freezer until they were ready to use.
Yeah. And before time passes, the boys begin teasing in their own way when they decide to show up looking like snacks.
They do. They do. So snacky.
Yeah. Coming in, oh, it's cold, Millie. We could use a couple more blankets.
I do like this scene, though, because it shows that there's been enough time passed that everyone's tempers has cooled off. The boys have realized that you have done wrong, so they're still out in the barn. They haven't asked to come back in, and Millie's foot is still down firm, even if she has maybe let off the anger. They can't come in without asking for her permission.
Yeah.
For anything. You need a blanket? Ask Millie. Can't come in unless she says yes. Does you got a stiff neck and you need some, I don't know, cocaine? Yeah, ask Millie.
Yeah, basically. And I mean, we know the women are eyeing them, but in the next scene we learn that they are just as thirsty.
They are just as in love, and I bet you if we'd had a scene in town, they would have sang a duet song from miles away with the weird polecat dance scene.
Yep. And in this part, they are getting fitted for dresses.
They're spending their winter making new clothes, because this is the first time we've also started to see Millie in new outfits.
Mm-hmm.
She's had her blue one this whole time, but now that there's other ladies around, they're making other dresses.
Yeah, they're all in their corsets.
Yes. And I do like this because the undergarments for this are fairly accurate. You would have had underwear that you wore under your corset. You would have gone all the way down past your knees and all the way down past your elbows. Probably would have peeked out from under your dress here or there. And that's what you would have lived in, more or less.
Yeah.
They wear their little shoes around because there's no heating in this place other than the wood stove in the corner, so can't let your toesies get cold.
Yeah. Well, we're also told that they're bored as shit too.
They are sick of being inside.
They've heard all the stories over and over again, but one of them gets particularly excited over the Sabin women's story.
Boy, everyone in this frickin' house likes this story.
Her reaction reminds me of how some modern-day housewives react to 50 Shades of Grey.
It is very similar.
Yes. And we also learn, I think at this point we do learn all their names now.
Yes.
And one of them still gets me.
Yeah, okay, I looked that one up. Is it, by any chance, Dorcas?
It's Dorcas.
It's Dorcas.
One, also because she's the hottest of them.
Yes, she is a professional ballerina.
Ah.
And she went on to be, this was not her first rodeo. I think there was only one debut appearance in this whole film.
Mm-hmm.
She went on to do really great work. She was the one who got partnered with the baseball player, which is why we don't see a really great dance scene of her from the barn scene.
I see.
Yeah. But I did look up Dorcas as a name, because I also find Dorcas hilarious. And to keep in with the family tradition, Dorcas, for this movie, as far as I can tell, is a biblical name. I looked up its meaning and then left my notes at home.
Nice.
So it has a meaning. It's a rather long-winded one. But yeah, it is a biblical name. It's not very popular anymore.
I wonder why.
It reminds me of the movie with Biggest Dickus.
I think it's the one your husband keeps trying to get me to watch.
I love this movie.
Is it The Life of Brian?
No, it's not Life of Brian. I think it's History of the World.
I think, I don't know. I haven't seen either of those.
It's so funny.
I just know your husband keeps trying to get us to watch Life of Brian.
I love Life of Brian as well. That one is also funny. And we'll have to get to that one differently, because that whole scene, the cast that came in who the Roman general is talking to, they were told they weren't going to get paid if they laughed, which is why everyone is trying so damn hard not to laugh at Biggest Dickus.
That is great.
But no one laughs at Dorcas, because that's her real name.
I laugh.
I do too.
And so, after this, the women begin to fight each other like the boys, and
they've gone stir crazy.
Yeah, Millie comes to break them up with the surprise that she's preggo.
Hooray, a baby!
And they all sing about being a June bride. Or no, that song happens
just before this.
Yeah, just before
this. They all dream about being a June bride, and we get to learn a little bit of their wants and desires too. We learn that one of them really wants to get married and have a baby right away. One of them wants to be a happy bride forever. One of them wants to have a really fun and exciting husband, and all of them want to be married in June, which I can't complain about because I was also married in June.
Nice. And so now we cut to spring.
Yes.
The hormones are raging.
The barnyard is full of baby animals.
The pairs are hinting at wanting to practice reproduction.
Yes, and at this point we can tell that Millie must now think the boys have learned their lesson, because the ladies are allowed back outside, but not unsupervised.
No, they're all around each other.
They're all around, and Millie's eagle eyes are forever watching.
Yeah, okay, I need to back up a second.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how long it's gone for the women to go stir crazy.
Yes.
Because Millie is at a point where she knows she's pregnant.
Yes. And also willing to tell everyone.
Yeah, so how long has it been since Adam's really been gone?
It could be quite a while.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, back then there's not exactly a early sign pregnancy test.
True.
And back then it was also fairly easy to lose a baby. So Millie might have decided to wait quite a while to tell the girls that she's pregnant, until she was really, really sure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so it potentially could have been a while.
Okay. Yeah. So, anyway, yeah, now the other hormones are raging for everyone else. One side little note, because this song number is just kind of,
yeah, it's a mess song out of all of them.
Yeah, it's another spring, I want you baby kind of moment.
It is, and while it is a good song, and while, it does solidify that everybody in this party is fully in love with each other, and very happy that they are courting, and also maybe that Adam's not back. The song, compared to the others, is lackluster.
Yeah. One thing that is cute to notice is that all the brides' dresses are quilts patched together from the Salvation Army.
Yeah, the costume makers wanted them to feel homemade.
Yeah.
And they succeeded. I also do like, though, that the girls, when they left the town, dressed very similarly to the townsfolk. They were given bright dresses originally, kind of foreshadowing the brothers' bright dresses. But now that they are fully living on the farm, they also get to wear fun, exciting dress colors. Some of them even match their men.
Exciting's one way to put it.
I mean, back then, they got 2 books for entertainment. This is exciting.
Yeah, because they're already tired of them, 2 weeks into it.
They have spent all winter finally being able to wear this fucking dress.
Yeah. And so, as the song ends, Millie is having her child.
It's so exciting.
And so exciting that Gideon passes out because he's going to be an uncle.
Good for him. He's so sweet.
Yeah.
He's the youngest and the dumbest and the sweetest.
Yes. And what does he do? He travels to the hunting cabin to fetch Adam and tell him that he has a daughter, but Adam is still a jackass.
Adam is still bitter. Adam thinks that he's won.
He's even criticizing Millie for having a girl.
Yes. Which, this is the second part of why I'm like, pretty sure the boys know almost nothing about how reproduction works.
Well, I was curious about this. This is also set 55 years before the discovery of the X and Y chromosome.
Okay, that does make more sense, because this was back in the time period where they thought that, like, women could just pick what type of baby they were having, which is silly.
Yeah.
And it definitely wasn't their fault at all.
Yeah.
They came, shook hands, and left. That's all they took. It's on her now. She should have done better.
Shaking hands is an interesting way of referring to that.
Yeah. I also like, though, that in this scene, Adam isn't even convinced the baby's real. He's so convinced, like, he has spent so much time brooding to himself that he thinks that Millie, like, has sent Gideon to lie to him to try and win him back, and ha ha ha, he's won.
Yeah, and even then, like, Gideon's like, you know, I love you, I've looked up to you, you're a real asshole right now, and clocks him.
Yes, and this was the moment that Adam needed.
Yeah.
Because Adam was so stubborn and so pig-headed that he could ignore his wife as best he could. He could hide from her as best he could in a cabin for all winter. But the loss of the trust of his youngest, most faithful brother...
That's a step too far.
That's a step too far. Maybe I done fucked up.
To be fair, he's known Gideon's whole life.
Yes.
He hasn't even known Millie a year yet.
No, he hasn't.
Yeah. And so, while Adam gets some sense knocked into him a little bit that we're hoping for, we learn that the pass is open because everyone in town is now gathering to...
Yes. I also like that they ring the town circle, and not even 2 strokes into the bell being rung, people are already guns ablazing on horseback. Like, they have been sitting in their stables waiting for the bell to ring so they go, 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 go!
Well...
There's no, like, let's go get the horses. All right, everybody ready? Does everyone have a packed lunch? No. We are already on the go. The bell hasn't even stopped ringing yet.
I mean, they're probably in the same boat as everyone in the cabin, but instead they've got 4 books.
Yes. And I do
and other people besides brothers to talk to.
Yes. The townsfolk are still pissed as hell.
Yeah.
Can't blame them. But this is kind of an interesting point you bring up, because the brothers do realize the pass is open because Adam comes back. Adam says, hey, pass is open. The brothers hadn't been thinking about that because Adam had to come tell them the pass was open.
Yep.
And then they go, oh shit, someone go get my gun.
Yeah, because they were sitting around playing musical chairs.
With their ladies.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we also learned that Adam has a little bit of a redeeming moment. Because he is there to see his daughter.
Yes.
Which we also learned that the daughter doesn't have a name yet.
Yeah, which, not terribly uncommon. There's not exactly a birth certificate to sign.
No, but she's been leaving it up to him to decide, but she's been thinking.
She's got 3 for him to pick from.
She's picking up where his mom left off with H's.
That's cute.
Hannah.
Yeah.
Hagen.
I like Hagen.
Hepzibah.
I'm disappointed he doesn't pick Hepzibah, because that's a dope name. He goes with Hannah.
Yeah, which...
I mean, a nice name, a beautiful name, but his child could have been named Hepzibah.
Yeah, and I think this is, like, the only lesson Adam's really learned is that, like, he's...
Yeah, I also think, though, that this scene isn't really well written, especially for the longevity, like, of this movie. It would have been beneficial to see a little bit more emotional change for Adam, because I think this is the part where Adam goes from being the oldest brother to being a father. And I think that's supposed to have characterly changed him and made him mature.
That does make sense. I actually didn't think of it that way, because the next thing he does, the brothers are getting ready to
fight back. He's like, no, we need to take them back to their fathers. This is the right thing to do.
Yeah, this, like, he is thinking like a father now. He's like, if you fight them, who are you hurting? You're hurting their kinfolk.
Yeah, and so while Adam for this whole movie has had the least progression arc-wise out of everyone, because the brothers at this point have turned into proper men.
Yeah.
They've all grown up, they've all learned how to socialize with other people, they've learned how to wash their goddamn hands. Up until exactly when Adam sees his daughter, he really hasn't grown any.
No.
But, you know, I've known a lot of friends in college who the second they had kids, they were different people. They grew up because they finally were a parent.
Yeah, and there's some people who just don't.
Yeah. And thankfully Adam grew up.
Yeah. And so as the townsmen are storming the farm, we have a kind of reverse kidnapping because now the girls don't want to go and the boys are trying to force them back.
And at this point, we see the girls are not just like, oh no, don't do it, but like hiding, screaming, kicking. They do not want to leave. You're going to have to take me over my dead body. Yeah. Which, of course, when your father's just right up assuming the worst, looks real bad. Well,
they haven't even assumed the worst yet because while they're stalking, there's a baby cry and the Reverend's like, oh no.
Oh no, because of course during this time period, a child out of wedlock is life-ruining, even in the Oregon Trail.
Oh yeah. And so, eventually all the boys are captured, and the townsfolk are going to hang them from the nearest tree. But before they do that, they have to ask, whose baby was crying?
Because having a baby out of wedlock is one thing. Having a baby out of wedlock without a husband to come take care of that baby? Terrible. Can't happen. Nope. He could be a terrible monster, but he's alive, ain't he?
Yeah. Someone's got to be there.
And of course, the girls have picked up enough of Millie's smart instincts and look at each other and all agree. It's all of theirs.
Aww. And they save the Ponape boys, and now 7 Brides for 7 Brothers ends with the happiest of all shotgun weddings.
I would say the director thought this joke was real funny during the commentary.
Yes, he did.
Because the fathers are standing behind the boys with shotgun in hand, making sure they all get married.
The girls look back for approval, and then as the boys look back, the fathers step forward.
Because, that's real scary.
Yeah.
And the director thought this part was hilarious. And for the time period, it was.
It's still comedic.
It's still a little comedic.
But not great.
No.
No.
And so now our delightful happy family is one big final official happy family.
15 mouths to feed.
Yeah. Good luck with that, guys.
Yeah. And so 7 Brides for 7 Brothers.
Yes.
I did not realize how big of a success this movie was when you brought it up, or when you first brought this up, because it was so successful. It changed MGM's whole marketing schedule. Because I think originally it was going to be, there was a canceled Brigadoon showing, and that's when the first showing of 7 Brides for 7 Brothers was.
Yes.
It was so well liked that even President Eisenhower urged the entire American population to go see it.
It was so popular. It was in the top 5 movies when it premiered in Britain.
Yeah, and I mean it did well everywhere it went.
I would say I think it won an Academy Award. Some of the actresses, someone won a Tony at some point.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the best to win an Academy Award for Best Picture and Best Musical Score in a year.
And on top of that, they threw it in the Library of Congress, which that's saying something.
They
bothered to keep it.
Okay, so I have questions on some of this, because this was done in 2004.
Yes.
I recently learned this year, you know what movie got added to the Library of Congress?
If Shrek didn't, I'm going to be pissed.
It's Shrek.
Oh, thank God.
Shrek
is a cultural icon.
Yeah, I did not know about I was watching an Angry Video Game Nerd where they referenced The Wicker Man 2, which was awesome. But,
yes, it was.
Shrek's now part of the Library of Congress.
Yeah, so from my understanding, and granted, I am not a Library of Congress expert in the least, but their job isn't to necessarily pick the best movies, quote unquote. It's to pick ones that are culturally important. Yeah. And this movie, for a lot of people, for a long time, was their favorite movie / musical.
Yeah.
Still is for some of us.
Yeah.
It's faded recently, and there's good reason for that.
Yes. Yeah, we'll get to that in just a minute. But on top of being introduced into the Library of Congress, at the time, it was adapted into a Broadway show that lasted 5 performances.
Hey, that's not the worst I've heard.
5 seasons of it.
Okay.
Not just I wrote the wrong word.
Okay, 5 seasons is much better than 5 performances.
Yes. As well, it was one of MGM's last musicals.
Yeah.
And it later inspired a 1968 television show called Here Comes the Bride.
Yep.
As well as a 1982 Indian film called Sate Pe Sata? Or Sate Pe Sata? I don't know.
I do not know.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, the avalanche scene's been used multiple times.
Oh, it has it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it has a long legacy.
Despite the budget, despite the time crunch, it did really well.
And it was well done, too. I think that's the biggest thing, is that it was done well.
It was. Despite all of the pressures and limitations, they produced a really good sounding and looking and choreographed movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Granted, a lot of people have trouble with it now.
Yes.
And that's a fair point.
Yeah, very much it's of its time, which means there's a lot of...
It's very...
chauvinistic moments.
Yes, and a lot of very traditional gender roles and identities.
Which, it's set in the 50s.
It's set in the 50s, and...
sorry.
It's from the 50s, set in the 1800s.
Yeah.
And on top of that, they didn't want to produce what they called a theatrical piece. So they didn't want, in their eyes, to have anything that they didn't think of as a rough and tumble person.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, at that time period, that meant there wasn't a whole lot of leeway as far as the look and identity of people, despite one of the male brothers being an openly gay performer for his whole life. So, yeah, there's issue with that. There's issue with how on paper it looks, especially if you're not someone like us who spends a lot of time dissecting a scene that on paper and in a movie takes a few minutes, but in a real world setting, probably months to years.
Yeah, and also looking at the historical context and the history behind a lot of the stuff, too.
And in most people's defense, you shouldn't have to.
No.
There's very few films where that level of research should be required, and a musical isn't one of them.
No.
Especially this musical. But with all that said, there is still some really solid, this is still a really solid musical work.
Yeah. No,
it just unfortunately suffers terribly from time periodism.
Yeah, it's not the most chauvinistic piece of the time. I mean, it's...
No, there's others that are just as, if not worse.
Yeah.
And this does its best to try and, while still be, it's by no means an excuse for it, because it shouldn't happen. But the movie and the writing definitely tried its best to take the Roman myth that it's all based off of and give it a more pleasant and happy spin.
Yeah.
Should they have done that in the first place? That's something for lots of people to debate, and I don't think it's necessary. Honestly, if that Roman myth left legend, I don't think anyone would be the worse for it. Especially not in, public myth sector. Maybe in the more academic realm, it would make more sense. But this is a musical.
Yeah. But, for me, someone coming from watching a lot of exploitation movies, specifically I watched a Pink film last night, so that was, I dive into a lot of this stuff quite frequently. It still brings up it's interesting concepts, but I think it's also parts of history that are forgotten, and I think it's important to dive into those every now and then. Yes,
and so while I don't think this movie is something that the casual audience nowadays would receive wholeheartedly, I do think that there is parts of it, and arguably the whole movie as a whole needs to be looked at as a measure of our progress.
Yeah.
Because it's a good thing that this movie makes so many people uncomfortable. That means that we've all started to see the error in this way, because there was a time period not very long ago that this movie was funny and boy humor, and it's just how things were. Oh, they learn to love each other, and it's not a big deal. And nowadays people are terribly uncomfortable and upset on both sides of the spectrum, so that's a good thing.
Yeah.
That means we've progressed as a society.
Yeah.
Maybe not as far as we'd like, but, I'll take what we can get.
Yeah, things take time.
Yes.
Yeah, so at the end then, even with all its problems, do you recommend watching Seven Brides for Seven Brothers?
I do. I don't think it's going to be everyone's favorite. I don't think it'll be everyone's number one cup of tea, but the performances in this movie were done on another level.
Yeah.
The amount of work and effort that went into the choreography and the lyric writing for this is great. And honestly, just watching the dance scenes alone is probably all you really need to get into if you're not into old, arguably wrong TV and movie shows like I am.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I did like it. Is it a must-watch? Not necessarily.
That's fair.
It's good, and I appreciate that it's more in line of like what I like in musicals.
Mm-hmm.
Because either I like the musical to be like this, or just to be batshit crazy and ridiculous.
Gotcha. Yes.
So and to be fair, those are the ones I end up stumbling upon on accident. I'm thinking of like Repo the Genetic Opera.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Happiness of the Katakuris.
Yes.
That kind of musical, but.
I think if you're really into musicals and you are willing to go into this with an understanding of its time period and that it is no longer an okay subject but an artifact of history,
mm-hmm.
I think this is a really good one to watch. But if you're not a musical person, maybe just listen to the soundtrack.
Maybe. I mean, it's worth a watch, but not something to come back to repeatedly.
No. If you grew up with this one as your favorite, you can't put it down. I totally understand it. But it doesn't need to turn into anyone's new favorite.
No, I completely agree with that, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was Seven Brides for Seven Brothers.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Peace.